Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Maximize Your Advertising Budget and Avoid the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. My name is Eliana Raggio, and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is being presented by Dealeron. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Dealeron, well, we're an award-winning website development company and digital agency, and we're best known for our search engine optimization, our best-in-class customer service, and our award-winning websites. At NADA, Dealeron received the Best in Show Award for website design from Dealer Marketing Magazine. Dealeron was named the top-rated website provider by driving sales in 2012 and 2013, and Dealeron customers have been winners of the Digital Dealer Website Excellence Awards highly coveted overall winner 4 times in a row. We're the only website company that can claim that. Dealeron is so committed to lead conversion, optimization, and customer service that we are the only company in the industry to offer a money-back lead guarantee program. So does your website company guarantee you leads? Well, then maybe you should check us out at Dealeron.com. And we have a great show in store for you today. We're very pleased to have Jim Flint as our presenter today. Jim Flint is the president and founder of Local Search Group, which develops innovative automotive sales and marketing strategies for the 21st century. Flint's experience with working at the OEM level for Nissan and Toyota and his many years of retail automotive experience provide him with a unique insight and foundation for creating real strategies dealers can put in place today. With his eye for meaningful detail and the ability to bring it all back to real retail implications, Jim Flint is widely recognized as a thought leader in automotive sales, marketing, and advertising. And Jim can be reached at jim@localsearchgroup.com. Now, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the question feature located on the corner of your screen to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we'll answer those questions of general interest. If we're unable to get to your question live, don't worry, we'll respond by email later today. Also, don't forget, a link to download a copy of the webinar recording will also be emailed to you later today for your reference. Please feel free to share it with friends and colleagues. And I want to let you know, Dealeron's going to be at the upcoming Digital Dealer Convention in Las Vegas, baby. It's going to be at the Mirage, October 15, 16, and 17, and we're going to be at booth 809, and I'm going to be there. So if you're going to be there, you got to come by and say hi. We're going to have some absolutely astounding presenters for Dealeron during this year's DDC Fall Convention, and here are just a few for your consideration. Of note, we will be hosting a live webinar with Grant Cardone from the Dealeron booth at the Digital Dealer Convention on Wednesday, October 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That is a new date and time. It's the only time we won't be hosting it on a Thursday at noon. It's going to be on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So put it in your calendar. It's going to be awesome. If you're going to be there, check out these speaking sessions. Come see the live webinar. You definitely don't want to miss them. For more information or to get your tickets, go check out digitaldealerconference.com. And by the way, today's presenter, Jim Flint, will also be speaking at the Digital Dealer Convention. Jim is going to be presenting Google Enhanced Campaigns, the story behind the $50 click at the Digital Dealer Conference on Tuesday, October 15th at 3 p.m. This workshop will educate dealership personnel on the updates required by Google's Enhanced Campaigns and illustrate how they will increase automotive pay-per-click in new and unimagined ways. So if you're going to be there, this is definitely one you might want to see. And guess what? Our good friends at Local Search Group are giving away a couple of fantastic prizes today on the webinar. First, one of you lucky webinar attendees is going to be winning a copy of the Oscar-winning movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. And Local Search Group will also be giving away 3 months of their social media platinum package, which includes Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube setup, unique content creation and posting, round-the-clock wall activity surveillance, and Grow Your Likers campaigns. So that's 2 chances to win today. You have to be on the live broadcast, though, and all you have to do is stay tuned for the details after Jim's presentation, and you could be scoring one of these awesome prizes today. And at the conclusion of the webinar, you're going to receive a short survey, so fill it out because we're always looking for great feedback from our audience. And today we're also going to randomly select a couple of people from all the completed surveys to also win some Google prizes. So let's get started. Let's learn how to maximize your advertising budget and avoid the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. Jim Flint, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Eliana. Thank you very much.
You know what? Audience, by the way, it's the first time we're trying this today. We got webcam on today. So if you can see it, you see Jim Flint over there on the side. You can expand it, see what he looks like. And we'll be doing some more webcam stuff later on in today's presentation. But Jim, I want to tell the audience, the first time your name came to me, it was at another convention, and everyone was buzzing about your presentation at that convention, and you got a standing O and all kinds of stuff. And that is why I invited you here today, to scare the pants off of all of us and tell us about the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. So thank you so much for being here today. What are we going to be learning about?
Well, I hope that I haven't scared you with the webcam, but as we talked about before, we wanted to be innovators, and one of the big things going on in digital technology today is kind of the half of Facebook is the face aspect of it. So in order to save some bandwidth now, after I've just said hello to everybody, I'm going to actually switch the webcam off and kind of move into presentation mode and jump right into what our objectives for today's conversation will be about. First off, and just like you said, the Automotive Bermuda Triangle is kind of a interesting dynamic that's come together over time, and really what it's all about is prioritizing your advertising spend. We'll talk about that today. One of the keys to the Bermuda Triangle, because there's really 3 key points, is the Moneyball factor. So there'll be some setup here in terms of understanding that piece of the puzzle before we get into the 2 other aspects of the triangle. And then I'm going to show you how to spend 5 minutes a month in order to avoid the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. And this perspective is something that can work for a GM, a GSM, an internet director, and or even a dealer principal. So this kind of equation cuts across all different departments, and in a lot of ways can help dealer organizations get on the same page. At least that's been my experience with it. And then I'm looking forward to any and all questions in the final section of our presentation today. So with that, I'll turn it back to Eliana. She did want to start with a poll question today.
Audience, we need your help. We want to know who we're talking to today. So if you could, please look at your screen and answer this poll question for us. What is your current job title, role, or position at the dealership? And please just select one of the following answers. Are you a dealer principal? Are you a GM? Maybe you're a GSM. Are you an internet manager or maybe an internet director? Or are you a marketing director or have some kind of role at the dealership that has to do with marketing support? Whatever the answer is, once we get a majority of those votes, we're going to close the poll, share the results, and this way Jim knows who he's talking to, right, Jim?
Absolutely. There are pieces of this puzzle that I'll custom based on what we receive as feedback right here, right now.
Fantastic. And if at all possible, instead of writing in, if you could just select the option on your screen, we'd really appreciate it. And that way we can get that whole thing registered. Okay, we are going to close this poll in just another couple of minutes, and we will share those results. Jim, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Let's close this poll and share the results. 17% of today's audience are dealer principals. So thank you so much today for taking this time to be on this webinar. We have 4% of today that are GMs. This is fantastic. We don't have any GSMs on today's presentation. 42% of today's audience are internet managers or internet directors, and 38% are marketing directors or marketing support. Jim, I hope that helps you out. Are you ready?
I am excited. That's a perfect mix, because the beginning of this conversation is how to have the dialogue between the 2 groups. I've seen a lot in the digital divide that's been created between the fact that most dealer principals and most general managers came up during a time when there wasn't an internet department. And now we have internet managers who have grown up with that expertise in the background and utilizing social media and other aspects that are not native to our owners and general managers and partners is difficult, because you're basically trying to connect the dots in an environment where a GM and dealer principal didn't have to utilize the internet in order to be successful and achieve what they've achieved. So it's really exciting to know that we've got 20+% of the people on the conference call today who are interested in learning more about this aspect of the business, and really, in a lot of ways, hopefully you can connect the dots and start talking with your internet directors, and then maybe down the line you bring the GSMs, because I assure you there's a way to get everybody on the same page. But before we get into all that detail. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. In fact, I'm so excited this many people are attending the webinar, but I would tell you this. You've got to agree with me on these huge assumptions, or I would save you the next 45 minutes of your life. Because if you don't believe in these things, then the rest of this conversation is going to be a difficult one to accept. So I'm going to ask you guys to take these huge assumptions into consideration. Number one, the goal of advertising anymore is to drive people to your website. I'm not going to ask you to take your experience or even automotive experience into consideration here. What I'm going to ask you to do is think about the TV commercial that you see from Best Buy or Walmart, and the fact that at the beginning, the middle, and the end, they tell you that you need to go to bestbuy.com and that you need to go to walmart.com, and that hopefully your marketing, whether it's a radio spot or a TV spot or even a Google AdWords campaign, they're all about trying to drive people to relevant locations on your website. The second thing that I need you guys to agree with me on is that the new CRM actually is your website. Your sales tracking starts now with Google Analytics, and fortunately that's free. But it used to be that if you had a washout during the week, i.e. a rainstorm, and nobody was creating traffic at the dealership, you know, I've seen it now. As long as that rainout isn't the last Saturday of the month, you actually start building online traffic that results in end-of-the-month sales. So you've got to understand that the stuff that's entered into the CRM in terms of leads submitted, shows, appointments, manager TOs, desk confirmations, all those kind of important things are actually the second step. The first step, where all shopping begins, is on the website. And the third huge assumption is that having worked in the different capacities that I've worked in, I can show you the opportunities, and over time, I've grown up playing baseball. And all the statistical information that you'll see, kind of that geeky pocket protector side of me, comes from the fact that I've been looking at RBIs and home runs and stolen bases and ERAs and all kinds of cool stuff, and it actually translated, ironically enough, from a competitive sports environment to a competitive automotive retail environment. And so with that backdrop, I'll actually share with you guys some things that can help, hopefully, make a difference for your store. Now here's the cool thing, right? We all have ideas. There's an entrepreneurial spirit that drives the automotive business. But the thing that we've got to be cautious about is the fact that we all know with great ideas, there's a guy down the street trying to take our best thinking. So as I share this information with you, know this. This is absolutely my best thinking, but what's important to know that it's for your make, your model, your market. So while I've got general information that would fit most automobile dealerships, the reality is you've got to dig down and see how it influences your ability to sell cars where you operate. And that's not only from a new car perspective. I'm talking about used cars as well, because at a dealership level, we're trying to sell more cars more frequently. And one of the things that's a result of all this statistical analysis is something that I'm very confident people experience as they move from August to September. But I've been looking at this information year over year, and there's a trend line that started to develop in January of this year. And it's simply this. These two cool pictures demonstrate one thing, and that's that leads are down. And there's a reason why leads are down. One of the reasons is because of what happens once we get a lead. There's fewer of them that are coming through these days, so we have a tendency to follow up pretty heavily with the customers when they submit one. We'll call them, we'll email them. As a bailout measure, we'll look them up on social media and send something to their LinkedIn, maybe to their Facebook. And then right before we finally give up after a week and a half of follow-up, we might even text them. And as a result, we're kind of invading customers' lives. And as a result, they're starting to submit fewer and fewer leads. You know, and the reason why that's been okay this year until September is that sales have been up. So we've got this environment where you've got more visitors to your dealer's website than ever before. You've got more sales than ever before, especially on a year-over-year basis, and that drives net income, which is fine, but in reality, we're getting squeezed in the middle. So to hear a company like Dealer On provide guarantees on leads, that's pretty exciting, because I know most of the dealers I'm working with right now are fighting to get as many of those leads as they possibly can. I will say this, one thing to remember, if your leads are down, you still have to sell the cars, so the one thing that should be happening is closing ratios should be going up. It used to be that if you could get to 8 or 10 or, man, 12%, it was time to write the book and go on the road and do a show and let everybody know how successful you are. I'll tell you, these days with used cars, you need to be at least at 15%, going up into the 20% range pretty quickly. Otherwise, the math and realistically the business just doesn't work. So it's with that purchase funnel in mind that I started looking at the conversations I was having with dealer principals and our internet managers. And a lot of this came out of 2008 and 2009 when we tightened down our budgets because of what ended up being an automotive depression. Sure, it was an economic recession, but we just didn't have the capital available to us that we did in the, let's say, 5 or 6 years before when we were selling 16, 17 million new cars a month. All of a sudden it went down to 10 million. So we had to watch every penny. Well, if you guys have seen the movie Moneyball or you've read the book, I tell you, you're already a step ahead. But if you haven't, you absolutely have to, because it's not really a baseball movie. Sure, it's about baseball, but it's a business movie, and it's about doing more. It's about getting a return on investment. Because as you can see here, the Oakland A's and the New York Yankees were competing on the same baseball diamond, but they definitely had different dollars on the table. And this is actually a picture of Billy Beane. He's the general manager of the Oakland A's. And the book that was written was about the season in 2002. This is what you might look like actually when you find out that Brad Pitt is going to play you in a movie and you've had 6 consecutive losing seasons in a row. For sure, it's very honorable to think that Brad Pitt could play you, but the reality is that it's tough sledding, especially when you had a really exceptional season based on your batting averages and your RBIs and your runs scored, because back in 2002, the Oakland Athletics succeeded on that level. But fast forward a couple of years, they wrote a book, they made a movie, and all of a sudden, as you can see, starting in 2007, they had 5 or 6 losing seasons in a row, and it wasn't until 2012 when they reinvented themselves that they actually started to change the game. The reason why this is important for automotive isn't because of the one loss or how they approached it. It's really important because of this. The Yankees were able to pay almost $200 million in 2012 to get $2.1 million per win. The Oakland A's paid $55 million to pencil in at $589,000 per win. Take this, think in terms of your dealership operations, and apply it to your cost per sale. If you're looking to drive a lower cost per sale, and we've had clients that have worked at the $700 per unit level, NADA will tell you $400, $500, depending upon where you're at. You'll have different people come in at $300, and I've had clients that have worked down toward $100 cost per sale. But you really got to focus on that, and this is where this all comes together. You can see based on the different months, and even with comparable volumes, this is one of our clients, you can really overdial the deal and drive your expenses way through the roof without getting a return on your investment. So the whole purpose of this Moneyball factor and Moneyball focus is to drive your cost per sale. So I'm going to turn it over to Eliana for a first poll question that we're going to use, or second, excuse me, as a segue into more about what the Moneyball factor involves. Eliana?
Thank you so much, Jim. Okay, audience, here's your next poll question. And of course, we really appreciate it when you get involved with our poll questions. It gives us a little bit more information about what's going on in the automotive world. So for this poll question, please select one of the following answers. The question is, what is your dealership's current cost per sale? Is it less than $300? Is it somewhere between $300 and $399? Is it between $400 and $499? Or is it over $500, your current cost per sale? Or maybe you should know, but maybe you just don't know. Whatever the answer is, we want to know. So please fill out that and submit those responses, and once we get a majority of the votes, we'll close this poll and share the results. And Jim, I'm just curious, before we get to the answers from the audience, do you happen to know what the national average is, or do you suspect what most people are going to answer?
I think most people will be between 400 and 500. Your better operators are at the 300 level. There may be a few that are less than that, and if they are, they're highly profitable.
Oh, Well, I'll tell you what, we have a majority of the votes. Let's see what today's audience is saying is going on there. Well, we have, it's funny, he wasn't able to answer in the poll itself, but he wrote in that he was less than $300. We have one person on today's webinar, only one, who said that he's doing it at less than $300, but a majority of the people on today's webinar, 40% in fact, said that they're somewhere between $300 and $399. 20% of today's audience said that they're between $400 and $499. 15% of today's audience said that they're over $500, and a slick quarter of today's audience, 25%, said that they should know, but they don't know. Jim?
Well, that's a good backdrop to talk about. One of the things with digital, and I want to be real clear about this, I'm interested in what's the most effective medium. So if you have television buys and radio buys, as long as they're producing results for you, I think you should make sure that's part of your portfolio. I'd also tell you that for those that are tracking digital aspects of what you can do, I wouldn't shut off a digital medium just because it may not provide you with exactly what you want. You just have to understand the integration of everything. And I think probably one of the most effective things marketers can do and operators can do is to actually drive by looking forward instead of looking in the rearview mirror. I know a lot of guys coming out of December will put some wish into their activities for the month of January and start to allocate budgets based on what transpired in December. But if you've been in the business for 10 or 15 years, and obviously general managers, partners, and dealer principals have probably been in 20, 25 years, they're going to allocate their resources in January by dialing things back a little bit. And so it's that kind of consideration that can help you drive that cost per sale, because it's easy coming out of a 5-weekend August that we came out of with 3 paydays, and oh yeah, Labor Day weekend was in September where we had huge numbers, to fool yourself into thinking that you're going to be able to do the same thing in September, when the reality is you kind of need to make sure that your variable operations are performing on a variable basis. And the thing that you can't do is dial in your advertising expense without consideration for the fact that in all likelihood there won't be nearly as many shoppers. So I'll use that as a backdrop to let you know that Billy Beane did exactly the same thing. He recognized the market that he was in. So you see, when the book was written in 2002, the Oakland Athletic Stadium was shared with the Oakland Raiders. In fact, if you're reading through this week, there's some controversy because in order to get ready for the baseball playoffs, they had to move the kickoff time for the Oakland Raiders game back. You see, in 2002, there were a bunch of stadiums that were shared, but by 2013, today, this is only stadium that has this much foul territory. And so you say, well, why does that matter? Well, the new baseball stadiums have been built to be closer to the field, to give a better experience, and it's eliminated all the foul territory. Foul territory increases the ability for a batter to make an out. So he, in Oakland A's Stadium, had an advantage in terms of instead of going with the hitting model that he did in 2002, and after 5 years of losing, he needed to go with a pitching model because his stadium had an unfair advantage toward defense because he had a better ability when compared to all the other ballparks to have batters make outs. So he built his team around pitching the second time through, and that's how he actually came back. And I think part of the catalyst was the movie. Part of the catalyst was, oh my gosh, Brad Pitt's going to be playing me. I got to change again. The analogy for the car business is simply this. You got to know your make, you got to know your model, you got to know your market. And when you see those competitive advantages, you got to move in. And that's why I think it's so compelling what Billy Beane did over time. Because 10 years later, this was 2012 standings. I'll tell you, in 2013, the Oakland Athletics actually won more games than the Yankees, with very comparable $200 million budget for the Yankees, a $60 million budget for Oakland. And this year, the Yankees aren't in the playoffs, and the A's are fixing to match up against the Detroit Tigers. So I'm going to take the baseball component one step further. And for the advertisers and marketers out there, I'll tell you that you have to have a prioritized budget. And this is my starting lineup for the things that I would prioritize my financials for in terms of advertising expense. I do want to say this, though. This is just a sounding board. This begins the conversation. It doesn't end it. If you need to make adjustments for your make, your model, your market, then you absolutely should. But I thought about this in terms of having $100,000 available to me. You don't have that much money. Say you're only spending $50,000. Just think of this in terms of the percentage of your total spend. And this I know, it's funny because most of the general managers and GSMs come up through the front side. Obviously the GSMs are on the front side of the business. But they don't necessarily think about the service drive and the return on investment that we get there. There's greater profitability on the service drive. If you can drive your fixed absorption up to 85, 95%, then the whole selling on the front end becomes a lot more fun. You can do a lot more trades now because customers have held on to their cars longer than ever before. I would just tell you that in my starting lineup, if I'm looking to score runs to win games, I need to make sure I'm taking care of the service drive before I go chase down all these other aspects. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to help you make more money but also sell more cars. Well, the make more money part of it starts on the service drive. Second piece in my batter, if you will, in the lineup is the tracker. This is somebody, because you know right now, with Google Analytics and lead providers and website codes, you got to have somebody to track all this stuff. I'd allocate a very small percentage of the budget, but I don't think you give this assignment to somebody whose job it is to sell cars. If you think your internet director can keep up with updating specials, tracking the leads, returning the leads, holding your BDC agents responsible for returning calls, following up on their activities, listening to their phone calls, setting appointments, taking TOs on Saturday when things get busy, I think you're really setting yourself up for somebody who gets stressed out and can't effectively do their job at the end of the day. The best organizations that I've seen actually separate the sales responsibility and the marketing responsibility. And oh, by the way, I wouldn't give the tracking deal to somebody in the controller's office either, because at the end of the day, you really need somebody who's committed to sales to do the tracking, not somebody who's committed to tracking for the sake of tracking. It's a small nuance, but a really important one. So after you get the two guys up who set the table, the third hitter in my lineup is your website. The key to this is the website direct drives the leads that you get that provide better gross profit. You can compare all day and all night long what you're getting from your first-party leads on your website versus what you get on third-party leads, and you'll find that you run better gross per unit. I'll move more quickly through the remainder of the lineup. Indirect leads, number 4. These are the lead providers who give you the ability to take action. Cars Direct, Delix, Auto by Tel. I'd say that's 9 or 10% of your total budget. I'd then move over to internet media, and this is where you get into the Auto Trader and the Cars.com. I'll be real candid here. You can't have somebody tell you that they don't provide you leads anymore and have them be the number 4 hitter in your lineup. They need to be number 5, even number 6, because right now the feedback you're getting is that they are the number of printouts and the number of activities. So this is an internet play that's more like a media buy than it is anything else. And oh, by the way, the website direct includes SEM, going back to the number 3 hitter in your lineup. Includes the SEM, the pay-per-click, the SEO, anything that you do on your website that generates leads. Moving through the remainder of the lineup, number 6 is radio and TV. I think you wouldn't want to buy on a DMA-wide basis. You just want to stay focused on your area. Cable buys are probably the most effective way to do things for your dealership. 7th is Facebook and Twitter. You have to follow, an old school car guy told me once, you follow the people and the money follows them. There's a lot of people on Facebook. There's some really rich demographic information, and Facebook is doing a lot of work that's driving results for the marketing community. Their advertising results are starting to turn the corner, and Twitter is doing a lot of unique new things for small business owners. As Gen Y continues to mature and gain spending power, Facebook and Twitter are going to become even more important because you actually have somewhere between, let's say, 150 to 170 million people in the U.S. on Facebook. There's 307 million people in the United States, so about half the population is on Facebook. On any given night for, let's say, the Super Bowl even, 108 million viewers. So you actually have a stronger Facebook capability with more robust demographic information at a more efficient way of reaching them than you do for major events like the Super Bowl. I'm not sure if there isn't 200 TV channels anymore on cable TV. So it's somewhat fragmented. The last 2 in the lineup, I tell guys all the time, I don't think direct mail is a bad thing. It can be a really effective, efficient thing. A lot of GMs kind of raise their eyebrows when I say this because they're thinking, well, this guy's all digital all the time. No, I'm what's most effective. And the direct mail piece of the puzzle, what you should do is hang on to this until you need it. If you've got a retro program from the factory on, let's say, Camry and Corollas, that you need to hit the number at the end of the month, you're 20 days in, you don't think it's going to come together unless you put 25 or 30,000 on the direct mail, then do it. And you make the play and you make it happen and you get the big money. But here's the other thing. Understand what your ROI is for direct mail, and understand that if you aren't going to make the month, you're better off taking that money and driving it to net. Better yet, sometimes things come together. Like I said, in a 5-weekend August with 3 paydays and a holiday, you're probably going to hit that number without any help from direct mail. So point being, use it when you need it or put it in the back pocket when you don't. And then finally, I think as we continue to innovate and with entrepreneurial spirit in our business, you got to have some things that are experimental in nature. You got a lot of guys coming through selling you shiny objects, a lot of vendors trying this, trying that. I'm not sure that all of them are quite what they promise to be, but every once in a while you might want to take a chance to see if you got something new that's worthwhile. And over time, that piece of the puzzle actually becomes better for you. So that's my Moneyball lineup. But here's the thing that I challenge for the dealer principals and GMs, especially for most GMs are paid on net. I'd challenge you got to get the last 18 months of information. And this is where, you see Jonah Hill over here? This is the guy that's your internet director. So sorry, internet directors and managers, the 42% of the people on the call, that's you. Over here, that's Brad Pitt.
You mean
that's the
brains
GM.
of the operation? Okay.
You know it. It is absolutely the truth. The thing is, if you remember in the movie, Brad Pitt says, hey, text me the results, right? The reason Brad Pitt does that, he doesn't watch the game. He's just interested in the outcomes. Because Billy Beane, who is the guy that Brad Pitt is playing, was a top-notch draft pick. He had all the tools. He was supposed to be great. But he never quite lived up to his expectations. In fact, he kind of flopped. The guy drafted before him was Darryl Strawberry, who went on to win World Series and had a successful career with the New York Mets, and his kind of flamed out. So this statistical approach was one way for everybody to be on the same page. Did he get a hit? Did he get on base? Did he score a run? These were the kind of things that they looked at. The GM knows, and an internet director knows, that when entering information into a CRM, you can pretty much work the system. And I'm only saying this at a real practical level. The truth in numbers, if an internet director is going to be held accountable to a 10% closing ratio, one way to do it is to not enter in all the leads. Another way, or on another measure for desk confirmations, or even a salesperson to work his action plan, is to say when he comes in this morning on October 3rd with an assignment to do 20 phone calls. Well, if he goes in and you look in the CRM and he entered those phone calls between 9:01 and 9:05, and it's all documented in the CRM, the reality is he didn't make those 20 phone calls. And I've seen a lot of doctored action plans. And it's not about any of that, because all those things can be maneuvered and candidly manipulated. What it's about are things that are inarguable. And this is how dealer principals and internet directors can get on the same page. And it's through a spreadsheet that's very simple to secure. It's you take two things you can't argue about. One of them is the total visitors to your website. It comes from Google Analytics. And then you actually take the number of cars that you sold, new and used, as it's shown on your financial statement, right? Two places that everybody's on the same page about it. And you look at what your absolute closing ratio is for those two key components. It used to be that the internet department was a department. Anymore, with 90% of the people coming from a website before they get to your store, I tell you that we're in the world of internet dealerships. So that percentage is important to know. And while over the years, and I've been studying these numbers for 4 years with lots of different organizations, I've found that profitability is maximized closer to 2.0%. In other words, for every 100 visitors, you want to get 2 car sales. I would tell you that the most important thing you can do as an owner or a dealer principal or general manager is put a third column in there for net income, because that net income will determine how you see profitability for your make, your model, your market. And that will tell you where you need to be in the future. I've often seen guys that are running 1.0 on their Moneyball factor, And that to me means that they've got operational elements that they need to consider. And moreover, they might be arguably advertising too much because they're not able to handle the bandwidth that's coming through their organization. People that close at 5% have a tendency to be too operationally efficient and probably could utilize more traffic because they're not able to close at as high a ratio as they could if they were able to and interested in maximizing the return on investment. But again, those are my directional numbers based on my experience. What you've got to do is figure out what your numbers are for your dealership historically. And the last 18 months, even the last 12, will give you everything that you need to know to really kind of hit the fourth quarter, October, November, December, pretty effectively. The numbers for the total vehicle sales, grab them from your income statement. The website visitors you should get from Google Analytics, and away you can go. And so that is actually the first piece of the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. And I wanted to let you guys know that we have a couple of worksheets that I've already developed that you can download at automotivebermudatriangle.com. So if you just enter in your information there, we'll have some worksheets that it took me a few years to develop. But this piece is how those three things kind of connect together. And I will give you an idea that you don't want to throw your money into the ocean. It's unbelievable the number of people that come to me and say, hey, Jim, how much should we spend on our advertising? And at first I tried to come up with an answer, but I realized over time that the best way to answer that question is to actually ask a few more questions. And these are things that I think everybody knows. The Moneyball factor is something that's relatively new that connects the organization. You know why it connects the organization too? I think it's important. Because all of a sudden you've got general managers who are focused on getting people to the website, which is exactly what internet managers have wanted before, but haven't necessarily been able to get the organization to buy into. And then what it does is it gets the internet manager to focus on total vehicle sales, which isn't necessarily something that dealer principals and GMs have been able to do before. I know a lot of dealer principals pay their internet managers based on the number of internet sales that they get. I tell you, the enlightened dealerships moving forward are paying their internet directors and internet managers like they would pay the new car desk and the used car desk, because that's how much they influence the business. Moreover, the dealer principals and GMs of the future, well, they're going to have to go through that internet chair. Used to be you had to go through the F&I chair to get to the GSM job, but I tell you, the best GSMs for 2010 forward are the ones that have been in F&I and the internet share, because those two pieces of the puzzle are what you need to be able to drive the sales organization anymore. So the Bermuda Triangle, very quickly, and this is the part that I think most people on the call can already tap into, the 38% of the group that's marketing, this is a little bit of digital sales operations on the fly. But when people come to me with how much money should I spend, I've got to know two things: how many people they have that are selling cars, and then how many cars they actually have on the ground. Because I've got guys that tell me that they want to sell 400 cars a month, but they've got 20 salespeople. Here's the cold, hard truth. You shouldn't put a penny into advertising until you have the staffing levels that you need in order to sell the vehicle volume that you want. I know it sounds simple, but NADA tells us 8 cars per month. To keep math simple, I'm going to say it's 10, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's hard to get people to want to sell more than 10 cars per month. If you're running faster than that, that's fine. Put it into your personal Automotive Bermuda Triangle, but I would tell you to take the wish out of it. You got to know historically. If your guys have only been averaging 10, then you got to go with 10. Now the inventory is important as well. If you're trying to sell 400 cars and you've only got 400 cars on ground, you're not going to have a 30-day supply. Just no way around it. So what you've got to do is calculate that. I use a 60-day supply, which is easy on the math side of things, but it's actually a little bit more difficult when you think in terms of what's actually transpiring. A lot of stores are at 45-day turns, and as a result, you would divide by 1.5. But in lieu of making this conversation about the math, we'll just say that in this perfect world, you got a 60-day supply, and you've got 400 new used cars on the ground, so you're going to target in at 200 sales per month. And if you circle back to the Moneyball factor that we were talking about, and that's your average closing ratio of internet visitors, If you know that you've got 10,000 website visitors a month and a 2% closing ratio, you're good with 200 sales. Now, here's the thing. If you're coming in at a 1% closing ratio, right, you're only going to be averaging 100 sales. What you need to be able to do at that point is, A, up your website visitor count to 20,000, and that's where a company like mine comes in to help you improve your SEM, your SEO, your Facebook, your even radio and TV to get people to your website. Or, right, the other way to improve this, if you had a 1% closing ratio, is to work on those operational elements that can help you deliver vehicle sales. Is your operator giving the correct directions to the dealership when you get the phone calls? Are your phone calls being handled properly? Are they setting appointments? Are you doing early manager TOs? Are you doing desk confirmations? Things like that are becoming more and more important each and every day. So this is, like I mentioned, the actual spreadsheet that we have out there for you to be able to download. I wanted to go through real quickly some of the information available on it. You can see that dealer 6 in this equation, and I'm pointing down to the bottom line, the southeast corner of this piece of paper, if you will, the place where you want things to go in your financial statement for those of you playing at home. 18 days into this month, you can see over the right, we've got days so far. That's one of the fields you enter in. For March, this guy is running a Moneyball factor of 2.7%, and the rest of the guys are running 1.9, 1.8, 1.5. Not bad. The guy that's running 0.93 is the one that I'd be worried about. But what I can tell you that I can take away from this 18 days in the month, the guy with 2.68, I told the whole group I was working with on this, he's going to kill it on his financial statement, and he absolutely did. He led the group by profitability in ways you can't even imagine. You know, it didn't mean that he had the most website visitors. It didn't necessarily mean that he had the most vehicle sales. It just meant that he was going to get the best return on investment for the advertising activity that he was doing in what otherwise turned out to be a very profitable month. But these are all metrics that I think are really important for dealerships to understand. It's the website performance, it's the actual vehicle sales, it's the staffing and inventory, and then the calculations that can be derived from them. I'm happy to also share with anybody who looks at this and goes, I don't understand it. You can send me an email, and I'm happy to set up a 15 or 20-minute GoToWebinar where we can kind of walk through this for your particular dealership.
Oh, that's really nice. And by the way, just to remind everyone, his email address is jim@localsearchgroup.com. Thanks, Jim.
You got it. Thanks, Eliana. So I will tell you that one of the focuses I've always had based on that statistical background that I mentioned is efficient markets. There's a lot going on in automotive digital marketing these days. Each of the things listed here on the left are all things that have really come into play in the last year. Google Enhanced Campaigns launched July 22nd. It's toward the end of last year that we started to realize that our dealership websites were kicking out 70, 80, 90,000 vehicle display pages a month, and that AutoTrader and Cars were giving us somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000. Pre-roll video. It's huge. And if Billy Bean were in automotive digital marketing, I assure you he would be doing pre-roll video. Google's made that so attractive that it's hard to ignore, and I candidly believe that they can't keep it around the way they've established it today forever. At some point, it's going to change. So I'm of the mindset for the time being that there's an inefficient market that aggressive advertisers can take advantage of. And then finally, Facebook with RL Polk, they launched a partnership in April of this year that really changes Facebook advertising in ways that you can't even imagine, because you can now know how long somebody's owned a car. You can know whether they have a lease affinity or not. You can also know whether they've bought the car within your primary market area. So there's a lot of implications for that as well. And then the other thing that I think is key, that's the purchase funnel on the left. The one thing that operators have to be thinking about today is showrooming. And it's a term that basically, to cut to the chase, it's what we do when we leave our customers alone on a busy Saturday right before they go into F&I. With the idea of all the work we had to do to get them to the dealership, there are few people now coming in because of all the stealth shopping that's going on. Once we get them there and we get the pencil and we get the agreement, we send them over with the paperwork for how much the car costs, and we leave them alone for 30 or 45 minutes because we're jammed up. And the first thing they do, alone with their phone, is start looking around for pricing from competitive dealerships. So I would tell you there are definitely things that you should do within your store from an offensive perspective, and a defensive perspective. And on the defensive perspective, it can be as simple as encouraging your customers to log in on the Wi-Fi system that you provide at no cost, and then within that Wi-Fi system that they're utilizing, you make sure that it blocks your competitor names so that when they're waiting for F&I, well, they're not able to get to those other prices that you may not want them to see or even to have the consideration. I'd also tell you that some organizations that I'm working with are changing things operationally. When customers are waiting for F&I, instead of just sitting them there for 30 or 40 minutes, they're actually time shifting and taking people through the demonstration of the car as if they were taking delivery, kind of the after the fact, in order to help them set up their Bluetooth, in order to set up all the things that they need to do on the car, if you will, the vehicle delivery, before they actually finalize paperwork and F&I, because they realize it's a better thing to do than to leave a customer to literally his own mobile phone device. And I think one of the keys to this change is simply that the percentage of mobile visits to websites is huge. When Google moved over to Google Enhanced Campaigns on July 22nd, it was a recognition of the fact that this is a dealer 20 group that I recently spoke with. Close to 45% in some cases of the visitors to your website are coming through a mobile device. So you really have to work with website providers that provide recognition of where the customers are in their shopping process. Companies like DealerOn that will know if a customer is on a mobile phone or if they're on a tablet or if they're on a desktop, and then serve up the right view for that particular device. Moreover, you want to have advertisers and marketing support that recognize the need to advertise properly in those different venues. On the mobile phone, on the offensive side of things, you can build Google Enhanced Campaigns with a 2-mile radius around a competitive dealership's location that indicate, shop us before you buy. So there's the one side playing defense where you keep the ability to go to other places out of the equation. But on the offensive side, if you know that there's somebody who isn't paying attention to this, it's some low-hanging fruit that aggressive advertisers and marketers can go after. I mentioned a little bit about enhanced campaigns. I think it's just important to know this. Location, mobile phone, and time, they're now able to be enhanced by percentages. So if I put in that I have a $1 cost per click as my maximum cost per click, that no longer is the governor. It's actually the fact that I can increase bids for that location by up to 900%, which would take my maximum cost per click to $9. Same thing goes for mobile, same thing goes for time of day. You see, Google basically opted everybody into mobile campaigns with this enhanced campaigns activity. Because such a large volume of people are on their mobile phones, they basically now include as a default enhanced campaigns. Before July 22nd, a lot of dealerships didn't even know that mobile was out there, and you're able to win a game that other people don't even know is being played by competing actively in it. Now you have to maneuver through it a little bit more intelligently. One other thing that I think is key to 2013 in terms of allocation of your budget and resources, I appreciate greatly the people that are tracking leads. You have to do it. There's form submissions and there's phone calls that should be tied back when and if at all possible to its source. But the thing that is more highly correlated to vehicle sales is vehicle display pages. I've seen it transpire especially over the first 8 months of this year. And I've run this for multiple 20 groups across the nation, and we actually have a page that you can download for the marketers out there. I would say this is for the 38% that provide marketing support. I wouldn't necessarily want the internet managers pursuing this one, but it'll take you 5 minutes once you understand it to set up your Google Analytics page so that you can track vehicle display pages and give your dealership a feel for exactly how many people are actually visiting your site to look at the things you have the ability to sell. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing broadcast and sending people to your homepage through TV or radio, it's not nearly as effective, nor is it as nearly as important as sending people to the inventory that you're trying to sell. So you want marketers to start thinking in terms of not only conversions, but vehicle display pages. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is from one of the 20 groups, and you can see that it's staggering how many more VDPs are being able to be secured from your dealership websites than from some of the other competitors that are out there. Given a perfect world, I think you would want to have third-party leads as a part of your portfolio. It can help enhance your ability to sell cars. But I always want to know what my return on investment is, and you can see in this particular instance, the return on investment or cost per VDP is dramatically lower with your website than it can be with some of the other providers. But don't take my word for it. Back to the original premise, it's your makes, your models, your markets. So whatever you might be spending, that's why I think it's so critically important to set up your vehicle display page count, determine how much you're spending on your advertising budget, establish your return on investment or your cost per VDP for your website, and then do the same for any other third-party provider that you're working with, knowing how many VDPs that they deliver and knowing how much money you're spending. The VDP count for AutoTrader and Cars.com is readily available for those people that are using great systems like vauto.com, or vauto, I should say. So I'll take a break real quick here, Eliana, and we've kind of gone through the meat of the presentation, but it looks like it's time for another poll question.
Jim, great presentation so far. And audience, I hope you've been enjoying it. We are going to get to our last poll question of the day. And as always, we really appreciate your input and your insight with answering these poll questions. So our last poll question is, who currently takes care of the social media at your dealership? Please select one of the following answers. Are you the kind of dealership who does everything in-house? Well, we have that answer for you to select. Or maybe you're a dealership who has a vendor who takes care of all of it for you. Or maybe you work together with a vendor to make sure all of the social media is covered at your dealership. Maybe, possibly, your dealership management doesn't necessarily see the value of social media. Or maybe there's just so many people involved, the list is too long, or maybe you're just not really sure which answer to select. Well, we have that answer too. Once you get that question answered, submit that over to us, and once we get a majority of the votes, we'll close the poll and share the results. And people are writing in me. Thank you all so very much for that. And you know, it's funny, a couple weeks ago we had somebody on presenting, and his suggestion was to have everyone in the dealership involved in the social media at the dealership too. So we didn't list that as an answer, but for that, I guess you would say that you would do it in-house. So we have a lot of people voting. Thank you so much, audience, for coming in and taking part in this poll question. I'm going to close this poll and share the results with you. Astoundingly, Jim, 59% of today's audience said that they take care of their social media in-house. 59%, that's huge. 9% said that they have a vendor who takes care of all of it for them. 27% of today's audience said that they work with their vendor to take care of the social media. And 5% of today's audience said that management doesn't see the value of social media. And no one said the last answer, which was they don't know or it's too many people involved. So Jim, is that what you were expecting? Were you expecting 5% to say that management doesn't see the value in social media? I would think by now everyone sees some kind of value in social media.
Well, there's still some thinking out there, and 1 in 20 sounds about right, that Facebook doesn't sell cars. It's really hard to tie it back to that. And I think your following here and the group of people you have are very much of a do-it-yourself mindset. So I think probably the overwhelming implication is that the majority of people are kind of on their own doing it themselves, and that's a great challenge. Hopefully the ones that are doing it on their own are the 38% that represent kind of the marketing support personnel. If the people that are doing that are the 42% that are representative of the internet managers, then we're in a little bit of trouble because there's a disconnect.
Well, I feel like internet, you know, it was funny. I forget exactly where I was. I don't remember where I was or who showed it to me, but I do remember it in the sense that I remember what was put in front of me. I remember somebody showed me a list of everything that an internet manager is supposed to be doing in a day or a week or a month, like their responsibilities. And it blew my mind how long that list was. So internet managers have a lot already on their plate, probably far more than most of them could even handle. And for them to step aside and also take care of social media too, oof, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine so much.
It's crazy. You know, one of the best things that the dealer principals and GMs on the call can do is to walk out of this meeting and make sure that their internet managers are doing sales-related things. I know sometimes, like, the internet managers, kind of like this poll question, like to raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? I can do that. I can do this. I can do that. Maybe you can do that on a slow Tuesday. Maybe you can do that on a Wednesday. But if you're getting distracted by the shiny objects, you're really not focused on the core mission of the dealership, and that's to sell cars. So to be a more successful internet manager, you've got to focus on the retail operations aspect of things and not the social media aspects of things. So for the internet managers who are being asked to do both, it's tough, because that's the same organizations that are probably asking you to fix the printer and take care of the faxes and meet with the vendors and just take care of everything, right? And so it becomes really stressful. You feel like you're in the deep end of the pool with 50 pounds tied to your feet, and you're trying to get to the shore, but all they do is keep adding more weight. So, you know, just beware that the best organizations are kind of separating those two pieces of the puzzle.
But Jim, I do want to make sure that the audience understands, you're not saying that social media doesn't sell cars, are you?
No, not at all. In fact, if you will take a look at this slide, breaking news, right?
That's awesome.
That's a good segue. In fact, there's a case study that Honda Cars of Katy, which is one of our clients, Facebook basically featured this on their national. You can log into their Facebook for Business and read about how we micro-targeted for them. Here's the thing, Local Search Group doesn't need any credit on this. It's basically us doing the work for the dealership, just to be clear about that. But what we did was we narrowcasted, and that's where Facebook comes into play. With TV, you're broadcasting. You're trying to reach as many people as you possibly can. But with Facebook, you have the ability, because you tell people everything about you. You tell people where you work. You tell them where you went to school. You tell them who you're friends with. You tell them what you like. You put pictures up all the time, right? And remember, there's 157 million people out there. So in particular, major metro markets where there are industries like in Houston, the oil industry, where you can focus on people that are employed by that particular category. Well, we built ads specifically to these people that only were shown to those people that worked in the oil industry. And this is the new age of Facebook. It's not so much that you get the ad right, because you have the ability. Let's think for a second about a college graduate program. You can target an ad in May for people that are between 21 and 23 and that go to a particular university. There's probably a lot of you that have people that you know that would be eligible for a college graduate program. And you, as a great marketer, advertiser, salesperson, could probably get the information through Facebook out in front of them. But no longer is it acceptable for that click on that ad to the right person at the right time to land them on the home page of your dealership website with no additional information. To make it work, you actually have to have a landing page that further communicates the details of what was proposed to them. So my point in this example is, if you went to the University of Texas and you resided in Austin and an ad that came up for you advised you of the Honda College Graduate Program, you'd actually need a landing page on the dealership website that had the details about the College Graduate Program for the people that go to the University of Texas. And as such, it actually creates a higher likelihood of people completing through and following up the deal. A lot of times we get clicks with no leads. What happens here is you get fewer leads, but a much, as I discussed earlier, higher closing ratio. As you can see in this particular example, it was employee discount for the energy industry. If you look through the details here, you can see it was for Chevron, Marathon Oil, ConocoPhillips, Baker Hughes, Reliant Energy, and all the other in-town Houston oil companies. Well, over the 6-week campaign, Through the CRM, we tracked the 29 leads that came in because we built a landing page that people landed on after they clicked on the ad. And what you'll see is 70% of the people started communicating back and forth with us because we were consistent with our knowledge. The BDC department had the details about what the ad was too, so there's another piece to this puzzle. But more importantly, 7 vehicles were sold. Huge 33% closing ratio. And the cost was about $500. So there's a whole new way to go to market with Facebook. It's a little bit more intricate. It takes a little bit more work, but it's a lot stronger return on investment. This was also featured in Automotive News this year. If you guys want to check it out, you can certainly look up the details of what transpired.
That's awesome.
And here's the other thing. I mentioned briefly about the RL Polk deal. I think the biggest takeaway back to the service drive is that you can actually lose the battle but win the war. Now you have detail available to you that lets you know when somebody bought a car in your PMA but from a different dealership. So we've developed campaigns for this particular client that focus on delivering information to a consumer that, yeah, we may have lost the sale to somewhere else, but we can still take care of your service needs. Because as we most often say and recite, sales sells the first car, service sells the next car. And in this case, you can maybe lose the deal, but get them back into your family, especially since they're closer to you and you can take care of them. You'll take care of their warranty work, take care of their oil changes, and then when it comes time to buy their next car, they'll stay hopefully closer to home. Moreover, and this is just FYI, you can actually load your information into Facebook via their audiences tool and include or exclude your current customers. So if you want to make sure in your advertising that you don't hit certain people, you can make that happen. And you can also take advertising for your existing customers and make sure that you don't double dip them on a coupon or upset them. So there's all kinds of ways to react and work with Facebook now. They've really, really changed their game during the first 6 months of this year. In fact, that's part of why their stock price is where it's at today. So I'll tell you, too, that about 3 weeks after Facebook announced their partnership with RL Polk, Twitter announced an ability to do ad campaigns for individual businesses. It used to be that you had to spend $5,000 a month, and I wouldn't encourage any dealerships to spend $5,000 a month on Twitter. But now you can spend smaller amounts of money and be highly effective with hashtags that you want to connect with. If you are a Ford dealer, you can put hashtag Ford and make sure you show up for anybody who's including that in the conversation, good, bad, or ugly. So there's really some powerful ways to go to market with Twitter. I won't get into them today, but suffice it to say they've become more aggressive, more effective advertisers as well, and their IPO seems to be on the horizon as well. I won't go into this any further. I mentioned earlier that Billy Bean would be in this place, but pre-roll ads, the one thing that is noteworthy is what it does from an SEO perspective. Since you're paying on a cost per view basis, the fact that here for or Nissan of Corinth, that you see that number 26,633, Eliana?
Yeah.
That represents the number of views that that particular ad had during 1 month. So if you tie your pre-roll ads back to your YouTube channel, you can veritably guarantee your SEO ranking will be the top spot with this particular advertisement. And so you have an ability to influence your search engine result pages like never before with pre-roll ads. More often than not, you're paying 10 cents on a cost per view basis. So pre-roll ads are a really, really effective way to integrate video into your Google Page 1 efforts. And so that concludes my presentation. Eliana, I just want to say thank you for having me today. As you know, I use driving sales. You guys are top rated on driving sales. I'm really proud of this one because it's for dealers by dealers, and we're #1, a triple play, if you will, in the SEM, social media, and mobile apps category. So I appreciate the time you've provided me with today. I hope we've helped your audience, and I look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, did you want to go over the takeaways?
I guess I will. I was a step early there. So the quick thoughts for the dealer principals, the Moneyball factor is highly correlated to net. Take a look at it, GMs, internet directors if you can. Gain control of your advertising budget by looking at the Moneyball starting lineup and then figure out for you what makes what models, what markets will drive the business that you're looking to drive. And then finally, take a look at your staffing levels and your inventory. It only takes 5 minutes a month, but if you do it for 12 months in a row, I guarantee that you'll have enhanced profitability, a better return on investment, and you'll have the internet directors, the GMs, the GSMs, the dealer principals, and the marketing support all working on the same team, pulling the rope in the same direction.
Yes, and audience, don't forget that Jim earlier also told all of you that if you want to avoid the Automotive Bermuda Triangle, he has a couple of things that can help you. All you have to do is go to www.automotivebermudatriangle.com. Jim, do you have anything else?
No, I was turning it over to you to see if we had any questions. I've got the Q&A slide up. I don't know if that's...
Yes, we have some great questions from our audience. And audience, if you have some more questions for Jim, well, now's a great time to send them in. And before we get to your questions, of course, we have a little bit of business to take care of. Now, it's that time. If you missed it at the beginning of the webinar, well, I announced that our good friends at Local Search Group are giving away a couple of fantastic prizes today on the webinar. First, one of you lucky webinar attendees is going to be winning a copy of the Oscar-winning movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. If you haven't seen it, I'm just going to tell you, it's pretty good. Did win an Oscar for Best Picture. And after we give that away, then Local Search Group is also going to be giving away 3 months of their social media platinum package, which includes Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube setup, unique content creation and posting, round-the-clock wall activity surveillance, and grow your likers campaigns. So all you have to do is answer a simple question about today's presentation. And the first one to write in the correct response wins one of these awesome prizes today. So audience, please get to your keyboards, get ready. Good luck, everyone. The first prize we're going to be giving away is going to be that copy of the Oscar-winning movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. So usually it's the fastest typers who win. So good luck, everyone. It's a quick answer, okay? Here's the question. Moneyball was about what year for the Oakland A's? And we have a winner. That didn't take long at all. Everyone is paying attention, by the way, Jim. Everyone got it right. But the very first person to write in the correct response is a gentleman named B.J. Sullivan. So, B.J., congratulations. We're very, very pleased for you. If you wouldn't mind, please write on in and let us know what dealership you're from and also your mailing address so Jim can get that awesome DVD out to you. And by the way, he is from Hyundai of Cookeville. B.J. Sullivan, congratulations on winning this Oscar-winning movie, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Okay, audience, not to worry. You have a second chance to win coming up right now. So this next question is to win the 3 months of their social media platinum package from Local Search Group. All right, audience, this is a little bit of a tougher question, but good luck. Here we go. The question is, what's Facebook stock price today? I don't know if it was actually in the slideshow, so you might have to look it up. What is Facebook's stock price today?
They might be able to guess as quickly. Interesting.
I don't see anyone who has
it.
the exact answer. It's funny because I get a lot of people who are writing in the same answer, but it's not the exact answer that you gave me, Jim. Did it change? Did it change in the hour that we were on the webinar?
It did. It did.
It did? Oh, well,
yeah.
You got to tell me what the answer is because I got people writing in.
It's 49.52.
49.52. Okay, let me see who the first person was to write that in. 49.52. Our winner today is Alex Jefferson. Congratulations. He was the very first person to write in $49.52. Congratulations, Alex Jefferson. If you could write on in and let me know what... Somebody said it just changed to $49.50. If you could write on in and let me know who you work for, Jeff. I'm sorry, Alex, and I'd really, really like to know that.
Congratulations, Alex. Congratulations, BJ. That's great.
Oh, fantastic. And Alex says Jim knows. I have no idea.
Oh, I know Alex.
Oh, you do?
I hope he'll be a digital dealer. He's always a great guy to see, and for others that are going, definitely check in with Alex. He's got some great ideas on how to stay in front of this innovative space. Without a doubt, one of the best.
Ah, fantastic. Oh, and he says he'll be at Driving Sales, and he's going to see us there. All right. Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much, BJ, and thank you, everyone, for playing along. Now we're going to get to the meat of the presentation. It is the question and answer session. Oh, come on. Come on, Jim. Come on, the one with your picture. Come on, the one with your picture.
Oh, goodness.
All right, audience. So if you have a question for Jim, send it on in. It's a great time to do so. But we already have a handful of really great questions from the audience. So, Jim, if you're ready, we're going to get to our first question. Are you ready, Jim, by the way?
I'm ready.
I guess I should ask. Okay. First question comes to you from Scott. And Scott wants to know, how much money should we be spending on digital advertising per month? That's actually a question I hear from a lot of different people, Jim. Do you have any advice for Scott and other people like Scott?
Scott, I think the best thing to do is look at it as a percentage, because without knowing your dealership operations, it's hard to say. But what I know is this now: if you're not spending 30% of your budget on digital, you're losing market share. And this is of your advertising expense. Moreover, in today's environment, a retail automotive should be very comfortable spending 50% of their total budget on digital marketing. In fact, a lot of dealers in major metro markets, as well as more rural locations, are spending a 70 to 75% of their total budget. And the guys that are looking to drive their cost per sale down to $100 instead of, and by the way, $300 is a very acceptable cost per sale. But for those guys that are looking to drive cost per sale down to 105 or 95, you're going to have to spend about 100% of your budget on digital. It can be done, but you've got to be very smart about the way you approach the market when you try to pursue it that way. So I guess at the end of the day, in a directional way for everybody, you should be very comfortable spending half your advertising budget on digital marketing.
Okay, thank you so much. Great question, Scott, and thank you for the great answer, Jim. I was wondering how you were going to answer that. Okay, Chip has our next question. He says, for your sales to visitor ratio, are you looking at unique visitors or total visitors to your site?
I looked at both, and I found total visitors to be a better indicator. I am trying to drive shopping experiences online as often as I can, so if somebody comes back, I'm all for that. But I don't want that to count as one shopping experience, because I look at visits to the web as independent of each other, meaning that if I can intercept somebody when they're going through the vehicle display page process, I want to do that each and every time, because if I don't, it may be that final time that they go to another dealer or they go to a third-party lead provider. When I've had them the first 3 or 4 times, I still want them the 5th or 6th. So I found total visitors to be a better metric to measure against.
Excellent. Chip, I hope that helps you out. And our next question comes to us from David. He said, would you add all your website visitors together? For instance, he has a group splash page, plus he has microsites, plus he has his main website. Would you do that, or how would you take that information and calculate it correctly?
I would use only one website. When Google made the Penguin, Panda, and Exact Match domain updates in 2012, I found that the microsites started to become less valuable. And for those dealers that have to have a manufacturer-prescribed website, I found that oftentimes, it started to cut the visitor count in half if you've got 2 websites serving up the identical inventory. It really hasn't doubled the traffic. So I have a tendency to focus on one primary website and try to be great with it. At the end of the day, the more websites you have, it's more children at the table. And just like kids in your family, you can spend the first 2 or 3 years investing a lot of time and money and up late at night trying to make sure that they make it to a level that they're self-sustaining, and you really don't know until 3 or 4 years later if you've got something that's viable. Google's made that even more difficult recently, so I think the best recommendation I can give is to be exceptional at one site versus trying to have, 4 or 5, 6 kids at the table, so to speak.
Gotcha. Actually, David wrote back and he says, thanks for that answer, Jim. It really helps. So there you go. Okay, I want to get to this comment that was made by our friend Jeff Clark. He said, this was early in your show when you were talking about service.
Okay.
And he said, amen, Jim. Service is key, and more dealerships should sell cars out of their service lane. And do you agree that more dealerships aren't taking advantage of selling enough cars out of their service lane?
Absolutely. I will tell you right now that you can take this. It's kind of funny. You can take a green pea, and they can sell 20 cars off the service lane with an equity calculator. Let's call it auto alerts. I'm just going to use them as an example because I know they have a solid product.
Okay.
And it basically, when somebody comes in on the service drive, determines where that car is in terms of whether or not they could buy a replacement vehicle for the same or fewer dollars per month. And if you have somebody who explains to them, as they have a 7-year-old car that they're about to invest in brake repairs, that they can have a new car for less money, then it's a pretty easy sale. The funny thing, though, is when you sit down with like the service director and the GSM and the GM, the service director doesn't want to take money out of the service advisor's pockets, so they don't want the service advisor selling the new car, right? And you've got the general sales manager who doesn't want to put one of his people on the job because they need to be taking all the ups and following up on the phone calls. It's really just having a general manager or dealer principal demanding that somebody provide that support, because it is, in my opinion, the lowest hanging fruit out there for dealerships today.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Okay,
Yeah.
By the way, Jim, you can put on your webcam again if you'd like.
I was going to say that picture is a little digitized and dated. I will see.
I like the blue. All right, let's get to this next question. This one comes to us from Adil. Hey, you there, Jim? Okay, there you are.
I'm there. How you doing?
All right. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
This next question comes to us from Adil, and Adil says, any advice for creating landing pages quickly? Oh boy, Adil is so ahead of the curve, because I know there aren't a lot of people in the dealerships today who would even think about wanting to create extra landing pages, but Adil does. So do we have any advice for Adil?
Adil, you're all over it, man. I would first ask what role you have in the dealership, but I would tell you that here's the decision point. If I'm willing to make the ad, I have to be willing to make the landing page. So that's the real key to this. If you don't have the resources up front dedicated to driving people in a narrow-casted way, then you shouldn't make the landing page. But if you do, and it can be done very inexpensively, as I explained with that Facebook example, you can take $500 and dedicate it to a particular industry in your area, as long as you can develop a landing page. And the best way to do it really is with particular employers, with college graduate programs, or if you work with a company like Ford that has a vehicle purchase program that includes a lot of people, you would, kind of the employee pricing concept, you'd want to try to develop landing pages for those, because you'll be able to demonstrate more effectively the return on investment. So I tell you, if you can sit down with your marketing support personnel, make sure they understand the intricacies of Facebook, go after a particular target, and then develop landing pages accordingly, you'll be several steps ahead of the curve.
Adil, I hope that helped you out. And by the way, I'm loving this whole webcam thing. Great job, Jim. Okay, Adil, I hope that helped you out. And Andrew, and he said, thanks, Jim, by the way, he wrote in.
Thanks, Adil.
Andrew wrote in, hey, Andrew, I love seeing your name come up on my screen. He had a follow-up question to something you had said earlier. He said, but 6 kids at the table would show up separately on Google. So how do you value that?
There's only actually one place it's valuable. Because if you remember earlier, that's a great question, by the way, Andrew. I love the way you're thinking.
He's a smart fellow.
Yeah, he is. That's good stuff. The deal is it's the total visitors, right? Because remember, instead of counting, we're looking at the total pipeline of people that are coming to see you. If those 6 websites drive incremental traffic, then that's great. My experience has shown that it doesn't drive significantly incremental traffic. And so as a result, I recommend collapsing it into one. The one place, though, to your point, where there's an undeniable advantage is if and when you can have all of those websites showing up in the top 10 spots for a particular keyword search. The problem is, I don't think you can get Ford Dealers Dallas. You can't have any 6 websites show up. You're probably going to have several Ford dealership websites show up. You may have something from Ford, the factory. But in terms of having microsites show up on Google page 1, that's typically a limited experience based on things I've seen in the past. And, Andrew, I've had websites that, let's say, had the manufacturer's name and the city name in them, and it really hasn't been able to drive that incrementality. If you're getting incrementality out of it, though, and you're showing up on Google page 1, well, I'd say keep charging.
I mean, we just, in the webinar we did last week, we pulled up a few dealerships who, when you Googled them by the dealership name, all they had coming up, I mean, this is by the dealership name, all they had coming up was 1 or 2 spots that had to do with the dealership. The rest was being taken over by third-party people or other dealerships or something else entirely. So I don't see how not having all of those assets wouldn't be that's a game changer, I think. I think dealerships aren't doing enough to put their footprint on the internet. So
yeah, I found it's more effective, and this is me. So different markets can do different things. If you're looking at major metros, it's very difficult because you have a lot of people pursuing the same thing. But the credibility that your base website has is huge because you're probably driving now between 10 and 30,000 visitors a month, depending upon which market you're in and which manufacturer you have. And with that many visits, your creation of additional pages can actually help those pages and your website. So I have a tendency to focus on helping out the core before I start helping out the extraneous sites.
That's awesome. And Andrew likes your answer too. He said good answer, and thanks so much for that.
Thanks,
okay,
Andrew.
We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We just have a couple more questions here. This one comes in from David. He says, what factors would you consider in coming up with your cost per sale? This isn't the first time I've heard this either, Jim. Some people have slightly different formulas for cost per sale. So what is included when you come up with a cost per sale?
You know, the history of the research I've done on cost per sale, I wanted to, and I can understand how you would today want to know your traditional spending and your digital spending. So there's really 3 key things, one of which is on the traditional. I keep it very simple. It's radio, TV, and direct mail. So those 3 things go into traditional. The second step is within digital, you're doing anything and everything that includes website expenses. Well, website leads first, right, because website leads can turn into sales. And then you've got to have a third category, which is actually website expenses. And so these are things that are fundamentally important, such as the website itself, right? And whether you're paying Dealer On or any of the other competitors out there, you've got a monthly fixed expense that goes into that. But there's a point at which you've gone too far, and that's, I think, when you're starting to include expenses like the CRM. You know, there's certain things that you can't assign to the digital aspect of it. I think there are things that are fundamental to being in the car business. So if, for example, someone starts to allocate things like the lease rent factor or, you know, things that are way beyond the digital marketing and advertising piece of the puzzle, you know, you really can't hold the deal accountable to that. I mean, we have to have the electricity, we have to have the lights, and you kind of have to have a website anymore these days. So I would just say that on the traditional marketing, you keep those 3 components, the direct mail, the TV, and the radio. And on the website, you break it up, or on digital, you break it up into things that are generating leads and things that are just otherwise expenses that are tangents to, but not part of the cost per sale. It's a pretty detailed answer, but I hope that helps.
Great answer, Jim. David, David wrote an excellent answer from Jim. And by the way, years ago, I don't know if he's still doing it, but I knew of a dealership who put in his monthly cost for balloons on his lot, and he put that in under his marketing budget. That's a true story. Okay, great last question comes to us from Chip. He says, when you're looking at total visitors, are you looking at traffic to both mobile and desktop sites combined? That one again comes from Chip. Or
Chip, yeah, that is a great.
should you look at them separately is really a great question too.
You have to look at them separately. That's a good way to put it. You have to understand the nature of the traffic you have. In the slide I showed earlier, you saw that 30 to 45% of the traffic was coming from mobile devices. I'll tell you this, in June of 2010, there was only 5% of the traffic coming to your website coming from a mobile device. I think the distinction today is you have to know whether it's coming from a tablet or a smartphone. In some of those instances with 30% of the traffic coming from a mobile location, the key is that if 25% of it's coming from a tablet, you're probably okay with the website that you have and just want to ensure that it's serving up in a friendly way in a tablet environment. But if you find out that 25% of your traffic is coming through a mobile device like a smartphone, that's a game changer, because now you're going to want to make sure that you have your marketing plan developed around click-to-call features, advertising components. The Google Enhanced campaigns are really playing into exactly the advantages that you could demonstrate if you were pursuing aggressive geography strategies and aggressive mobile device strategies. At the end of the day, if somebody's searching for you on their smartphone, they're probably looking to monetize with your dealership. They're looking to call you or get directions to you. And so I think those are probably the most critical customers that you have in terms of turning a now customer into a now buyer in what is very much a now business. So you've got to have a plan for that, and you've got to understand how many people are coming from that kind of a device into your website, into your dealership, because that really is the entry point. And if they can't get to where they want to go very quickly, they'll get out and go down the road to somebody else who has a plan for that type of activity.
Jim, you are so right on that. Chip, I hope that helps you out. And by the way, I remember when we had somebody from Google on here, and he was talking about mobile, and he said that of the people who look for your dealership on mobile, I think he said it was like some ridiculous number, like 79% of those people become your customer or make some kind of contact with your dealership or stop in at your dealership within 24 hours. And the majority of those people do it within the hour. So, Jim,
it's amazing.
Where are you, Jim?
I moved off. My Q&A is over, and so I felt like that.
I used to see in your face. Where's your PowerPoint?
Can you see that now or no?
Not just yet. We're getting to it. Audience, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Jim, you were, I mean, I knew you were good, but
yeah.
you are such a good speaker, such a great presenter. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing such wonderful information. I have to say, I was a little bit nervous to find out about the Automotive Bermuda Triangle. I'm so glad to know I'm not in it. So thank you so much for that. And we're going to get started with wrapping up this webinar. So, Jim, I hope you'll consider coming back and doing another webinar with me sometime in the future, maybe in 2014.
Aliana, it's been great. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy. You just let me know.
Oh, great. Well, we'll discuss. We will discuss, definitely. I want to remind the audience that a link to download a copy of today's webinar recording is going to be emailed to you later today for your reference. Please share it with friends and colleagues. This one was an awesome one. And today's webinar will also be posted online within 24 hours. So just go to dealeron.com/webinars and click on the link on the right side for on-demand webinars. And on that page, you can access any of our past webinars. You can also view and register for any of our upcoming webinars, too. Also, at the conclusion of this webinar in just a moment, you're going to receive a short survey. Please fill it out. We're always looking for great feedback from our audience, and let Jim know what a great job he did today. Today, we're going to randomly select a couple of people from all those completed surveys to also win some Google swag. You don't want to miss out on that chance to win. And I also want to let you know Dealeron's going to be at the upcoming Digital Dealer Convention in Las Vegas. It's going to be at the Mirage, October 15, 16, and 17. We're going to be at booth 809. We have some amazing, astounding presenters for Dealeron during this year's Digital Dealer Convention. And here are just a few for your consideration. And of note, I want you to take care, and please put it in your calendar. We're going to be hosting a live webinar with none other than Grant Cardone, live from the booth at Digital Dealer, from booth 809 at the Digital Dealer Convention, from the exhibit hall floor. It's crazy, I know. It's not on Thursday at noon Eastern Time, by the way, so I want to give you this in advance. It's going to be Wednesday, October 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Please put that in your calendar and don't miss it. But if you're going to be there, then come by the booth and see him do it in person. We're giving away lots of prizes at the booth, by the way. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be awesome. And if you're going to be there, I want to see you. Don't want to miss that. And for more information or to get your tickets, go to digitaldealerconference.com. And today's presenter, Jim Flint, is also going to be speaking at the Digital Dealer Convention. Jim is going to be presenting on Google Enhanced Campaigns, the story behind the $50 click. And it's going to be on Tuesday, October 15th at 3 p.m. That's the first day of the conference. And this workshop is going to educate dealers on the updates required by Google's Enhanced Campaigns and illustrate how they're going to increase automotive pay-per-click in new and unimagined ways. It's going to be a great, great, great session. You don't want to miss it. Now, before we leave, I want to let you know invitations are going to be going out tomorrow for our next webinar, 6 customer-centric strategies to maximize sales and service revenue with Bill Wittenmeyer. So the question is, are you always on the hunt for ways to improve your processes, your customer experience, and most importantly, your bottom line? The most successful and progressive dealerships today utilize powerful BDC, internet, and phone processes to greatly increase revenue and customer retention. And you can too. Creating customer-centric BDC, internet, and phone strategies will greatly maximize your sales and service revenue and dramatically improve customer loyalty. So where do you begin? So if you're ready to maximize your sales and service revenue with 6 essential, cutting-edge, proven customer-centric strategies, then this is a webinar you can't afford to miss. It'll be a fabulous presentation by your friends at DealerOn. Don't forget, our weekly webinars are usually held every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and we have some incredible webinar subjects planned to end out this year. But if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding these webinars and our topics, hey, contact me directly. I love hearing from you. Again, my name is Eliana Raggio. You can track me down online. I'm on all the automotive social networks, or you can email me directly at eliana@dealeron.com. Thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today, and I hope to see you all on a future webinar in our continuing education series. Have yourselves a good one.